the sake of brevity, I am going to scroll through and introduce and let the audit committee and everybody else on the WebEx call make everybody aware who's on. So I'm just going to go left to right so we can everybody understand who's on the call. So we have Rosanna Clark, our administrative specialist here in the Office of the City Auditor, is on. Besides her, we have Sharon Brown, our chair of the audit committee, is on. Stephen Volge, senior auditor from the Office of the City Auditor. I see Karen's head. You want to adjust your mic? There you go, Karen. Karen Hill, audit committee member, is on the line. Danny Reinhardt, fraud auditor, is on the line. David Bradley, our deputy city manager, is on. Emil Espiritu, audit committee chair, there he is. Audit committee member is on the line. We have Lori Herrick from our public works office, our energy czar, is on. Sharon Hayes, our fraud manager. Rod just popped in there. Rod Ingram from the city attorney's office. Tony Gonzalez, our audit manager. And let me go over who else we have. Okay, so we've got Gretchen Shidome, deputy city auditor. Jim Wood, Councilman Jim Wood, our vice mayor, who is also the council liaison to the audit committee. And we have our finance controller, Wendy Hugh, is on the line. Did I miss anyone? Okay, I think I have everyone. Okay, so I am going to turn the meeting over to the audit committee chair, Sharon Brown, to formally call the meeting to order.
Thank you, Lyndon. I appreciate everyone's participation today. The first item that we need to look at is the approval of the audit committee minutes of December the 3rd. Do I hear a motion for approval of those minutes?
A motion to approve the minutes.
Do I hear a second?
And Karen, you're going to have to unmute yourself. Can we unmute Karen, Rosanna? There you go. You're unmuted.
I second that.
Okay.
Could you hear me, Lyndon?
All those in favor, can I hear a yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. The second item is the adoption of the meeting agenda for today. Do I hear a motion that we approve the meeting agenda?
Motion to approve the meeting agenda.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Those in favor, please say yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. The approval of the meeting agenda. Thank you for that. Lyndon?
If I may interrupt real briefly, on both
Yes.
of those items, I believe the chair was indicating yes votes for herself on both of those items. Am I right on that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rod. Lyndon, the meeting is back to you.
Okay, Rosanna, if you want to put the PowerPoint slide back up.
Yes, it's loading. 1 second.
Okay, so while that is loading, I'm going to start with the fiscal year 21 audit schedule update. And hopefully everybody, if you don't have it, I mean, we're getting ready to pull it up, but if you're also looking at it, there it is. Perfect. And if you want to move it down to slide 4.
It is on slide 4, Lyndon, on my view.
Okay. All right. So we are 3/4 of the way through, almost 3/4 of the way through the fiscal year, and we are continuing to operate under the pandemic conditions. So we have all been pretty much working remotely and coming into the office as needed. As a matter of fact, a lot of members of my staff were in the office today as well as this week. But we have, despite working under those conditions, have been able to make good progress on the audit schedule. Since the last meeting, we've issued 2 reports that we will briefly go over. But as you can see here, the various audits that have been completed on the audit schedule. We currently have 2 pretty major audits underway, and we hope to have both of those to you. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty confident we're going to have both of those to you by the June meeting. The first one is number 9, the police investigation review panel is in progress. We have a draft report. Stephen has been working on that audit, and we're about 90% complete on that. The second audit that Tony and Gretchen are both working on is the police body worn camera program. And that is about 40% complete. We are in the field work stage of that audit. Okay. Then we have 3 more that will be commencing that have not been started. Our overall review, as you know, the city has received millions of dollars of federal CARES Act funding. So we're going to be looking at that in regards to the city's accountability of the federal dollars received, and to ensure that those dollars are properly accounted for any reimbursement purposes or any third-party audits that may come down the road from any of the federal agencies in regards to seeing how the city has accounted or spent for those funds. Surface water regulatory compliance program is going to be one of the other audits that are going to be commencing shortly as well as our annual audit of the police property and evidence unit. Okay, so you know, I want to thank my staff that under the conditions we've been working under, I think they've adapted well, and we've gotten to a point where even though we're primarily working from home, still being able to be efficient. Okay. Any questions regarding the audit schedule? Okay. All right. What I would like to do next, before we get into the 2 audits, I have invited, as I mentioned, Lori Herrick from our Public Works Department is here. And Lori is our, I call her our energy czar, but I will let Lori formally introduce herself. But under, you know, I'm skipping to page 6 under other projects, and we'll backtrack to the 2 audits that we performed, so that Lori doesn't have to wait around for those. But we have been ongoing for many years, been doing energy type audits, and we recently kicked off earlier this year a third-party review by Troy Banks, who we've used in prior years, to do an audit of our utility services, to include Dominion Power and Virginia Natural Gas. So as part of that audit, the liaison between the city and Troy Banks has been Lori, and we've also kicked off an audit of our telecommunication services to include our telecommunications providers, Verizon Wireless, Cox Communications, and Vita with the state. Okay, so I'm going to let Lori kind of give a brief overview of what that audit entails and a little bit about how we've been working collaboratively together to ensure that the city is doing everything to control energy costs. So Lori, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Lyndon. I'm not able to hit the share button, but if you want to see my slides, I sent them over.
Okay. All right, so if you just want to talk while I'm looking at that, we'll see if we can get it over.
No problem. I sent the slides to Rosanna.
Okay, so Rosanna can load that up.
So I just wanted to kind of give you guys an idea of where we are with our energy costs for the city. The costs are quite large. With electric, natural gas, plus how much we paid Dominion for their maintenance of our lights. Last year we were at 15.5 million. And then when you throw on top of that the cost of fuel, fuel's a pretty variable expense for the city. It varies somewhere between 3.5 and 4.7 million a year for the fuel costs alone. And so they add up. You know, we're always right around that 20 million mark. And so it has our attention and has two of us working full time to manage energy.
Lori, I made you a presenter, so you should be able to pull up your screen if you're able to. I'm trying to download your slides as well.
Perfect. No, you're good. I can run it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
There it is.
So we have energy software called Energy Cap that helps us to do exactly that. So, and we're using a process where we bring in the bills electronically when it's available. So we have about 1,000 bills a month that we bring in electronically, and we're collecting all of the data off the bills and running it through audits that are through the software, as well as getting the services of Troy Banks. And this will be our third audit with Troy Banks. I'll cover a little bit of what they found in the past. What's nice about Troy Banks is they're one of those companies that come in and audit at no cost to the city. And this go around, we're paying them about 23% of what they find. And that's going backwards. And then going forward, we get to keep all of that savings. So it's a real win-win for the city. In the past, we found a number of issues, both through Troy Banks and through our software. So we have a lot of refunds that have come in over the years. And what's nice about utilities is if you find an error, if you see that that street light was overbilled and you know it's been for a number of years, you can go back 36 months and ask for that credit. Wish it was more than 36 months when we can prove that it's longer, but that's kind of the maximum set by the SEC. But the refunds from errors have added up, and we can see we're overcharged for peak demand issues as well. So 164,000 is quite high, and we can talk about how that happened if you want. I can make lots of jokes and assumptions on that one. We have we shouldn't be paying certain taxes as a municipality, and sometimes some of those pop up on our new account. So what's nice is we can go back 3 years and get those credits as well. So we look for those and find those. Street lights, we like to audit street lights because there's a lot of them out there, and we're paying about $14 a month each, you know, for every month of every year, and they kind of add up. And so we're always looking for street lights to verify, okay, if that was a knockdown, is it still on in billing? You know, we want to look for those kind of things. So we audit those pretty frequently, and Troy Banks is helping us this go around. Then traffic signal audits, we found that we were overcharged on traffic signals. You know, they have unique IDs, and somehow unique IDs ended up on multiple bills, and that's another one I could make some jokes about. Rate schedule and contracted facility charge changes. Those are really great opportunities for us. We're always looking to see what is the best rate schedule for our facilities and making that change. And that has added up for us nicely. The other thing we want to look at too is like when you go in and you do these energy projects and do LED lights like we did at the convention center, then your demand decreases and then you can go in and negotiate that and drop the cost of that. So that's an annual savings as well going forward. And then Dominion Energy totalization, those are when you take groups of buildings and put them together, and like the judicial center and the correctional center are within the same block of one another, but yet they have different times of usage and different peak demands. And so when you put them together, you're not paying that huge ratchet that you see on big buildings like that. And I can explain that more if you'd like to know. I could talk about that one all day. Now, when I say I got jokes about it, it seems like when we find errors with Dominion, it never seems to be to our favor. And that's actually a very serious topic that Lynn and I will be talking about more. But we are seeing issues with how they're maintaining our streetlights. We are seeing issues with them not properly removing streetlights from their inventory when there has been a knockdown or when there's been construction and we've gone in behind and done city lights instead. And we're trying to work with them in a positive way to get some of this stuff resolved. There's something going on with their processes. And we've got to get to the heart of it because we just found another group of lights over at the aquarium that were removed 8 months ago and are still in billing. And so they got that email this morning. But on the positive note, when we do these things, when we find these errors and fix it going forward, when we make these rate schedule changes, it really adds up, right? Over 10 years, when you add up these items, we're saving about $1.75 million, right? And so that's good that we're finding these issues. It's good that we're, getting these credits, and we're going to keep doing what we're doing. I'm going to move to the next slide so you can see another initiative that Linda and I like to talk about. We like to talk about this with other municipalities. We like to talk about this with other audit groups. And the reason why is because there was a lesson learned that was back in 2016 when our energy software reports were posted on the intranet and staff was looking at it. We found a facility that no one recognized. And back in the day, we had staff that was in this building that's over there off of Little Neck Road. It's a leased facility. The staff that was in it moved out. The public works folks that paid the bill continued to pay the bill. They ended the lease, so the lease was turned off, right? What the real estate group that worked through that, or I don't know what the group would have been at that time. It was 20 years ago, but whatever that group was. But they didn't communicate to the building maintenance folks to stop paying the bill, right? Because you got 3 different groups involved, and we learned really, really quickly that this was a problem, right? We didn't have it on our radar. We assumed every bill that we received into our energy software had already been looked at and verified, and it turned out that we found this issue. If you do the math, at $7,000 a year for 20 years, it really added up, and so we wanted to do a recovery. We could not get support internally from city staff, and Linda can chime in if you'd like. But at the time, we were under one of these audits with Troy and Banks, and they did send a very strongly worded letter. It showed up in the newspaper as well, which probably helped us. But we were able to get a refund from them for $36,000. And it doesn't cover all that we lost, but it did trigger an annual verification now of what are we paying bills on. And other localities still aren't doing this. A lot of other localities don't even have an energy manager at all. But we know now that this is an area of weakness, and we tell other localities all the time that they need to do this as well. We have a new Troy and Banks audit that's underway. They're seeing some things going on with streetlights, and they are submitted about 75 of them in for review. Some of them are not going to be a full-on credit for lights that are not there. Some of them are like you're being charged as a bridge light, and it's not a bridge light, and there's a little bit of a premium you pay on those types of lights. So we can give you a summary of how it turns out after their review. And then we
Yes.
did see some small rate schedule recommendations come through, but some of them are on our facilities, like 3 of them, and we don't want to make changes to rate schedules on facilities because we do have some abnormal usage right now due to COVID. But the other ones, we're going to send over to Dominion and have them do the rate analysis and verify what the right rate schedule is going to be. A lot of it's lighting, like what should that lighting be when we're lighting up the entryway of Mocha, those kind of things. Any questions for me?
So, okay, Lori, thank you. And like I said, we've been working closely with Lori in regards to the various audits. Lori is our, de facto auditor. And the one thing she mentioned on the previous slide, Lori, can you just go back one and you can close it out? In regards to the annual verification is now required. So that is something that I just received, and that basically is requiring all the departments to verify that the accounts and lines that are being billed to their respective budget units do in fact belong to them. So we will never have a situation where there's an account that is sitting out there that is not accounted for. And, we're in a situation 20 years down the road where, oh, I thought that was your account. I thought that was your account. Oh, I thought that was paying for you. So every year that is being performed. And when we wrote our report on this, it required, the city manager required to not only perform the audit, but to attest to the city auditor that it in fact has been performed. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Lyndon,
Yes.
are there other controls in place for the assurance when things drop off and come on, since there's so many things like that happen? Are there other controls in place other than what you just mentioned?
Yeah, so Laura, if you want to talk about that, since we're having, a lot of buildings coming on, coming off, what controls, are people actually going line by line, or is there a control on your side?
So we have since been moved over into, we were in planning when our software went live, and we've been since moved to public works and facility management. And we're at the meetings now for buildings that are being newly constructed or renovated or leased. And so now we know. We also receive all of the bills, and when we receive a new bill, we look at it and we verify with Barry Shockley that this is the leased building, and yes, the lease does require us to pay the energy costs, or no, it does not. Let's send that back over. So I think that we have a good program now, but at that time we were not involved with building maintenance.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Lori, for providing that update. And I thought it was timely because we do currently have Troy and Banks on site through an agreement that's coming through our office, and we're having them work closely with Lori. So thank you, Lori.
Thank you so much.
All right. So now we're going to jump back to some audits that we have issued since the last audit committee meeting. As I mentioned, there were 2 of them. We did an audit of the Virginia Beach Visitor Information Center. I know many of you, on the audit committee, you've lived here, you've gone to the beach, but you may never have visited the Visitor Information Center, even though you may have passed it 100 times. And Stephen Volge, who just completed his 1-year anniversary with the office. This was one of the very first audits that he performed. So I'm going to turn it over to Stephen to kind of recap the audit that he performed on the Virginia Beach Visitor Information Center. So Stephen.
Thank you, Lyndon. So we started the audit by looking for progress made on a corrective action plan outlined in a Forensic Investigation Division memo that was dated on February 18th, 2020. The first 4 recommendations on that memo relate to cash handling, and our office found that those recommendations are no longer applicable as the VIC does not sell tickets where cash is involved. Recommendations 5 and 6 relate to items that are still in progress, some of which pertain to the use of temporary staff, especially during peak seasons. Management is still in discussion with the MOCA group to find ways to enhance the VIC, as well as management is looking for ways to reorganize the space within the VIC. So our office is looking to revisit progress made on those 3 things that I mentioned, especially during the summer months when the need for the temporary staff from Abacus may arise due to the peak season. The second thing that we found were 2 risks that still existed with discontinued ticket sales, or in spite of discontinued ticket sales. The first was the existence of a change fund that was in their safe. And the second was unsold tickets that still remained as inventory in the safe. So the 2 recommendations that we made were to return the change fund to the Treasury and to redistribute those tickets to vendors and get an appropriate credit. To handle the risks, our office, I just mentioned that. In addition to that, there was a verbal finding that we discussed with the VIC management, and that was to create a VIC staff manual. We felt that that would be good to bring about, as there had not been a manual devised for several years. That was found out through communications with management, and that also to develop consistent workplace rules. On February 22nd, less than a month ago, I confirmed receipt of the manual, and it does touch on aspects important to their operation, such as consistency of workplace rules, job-related descriptions, as well as employee expectations. So that has been taken care of, as well as the risks within the safe that we found.
All right, thank you, Stephen. And any questions regarding that? It sits right off the interstate. That's the main one. And as Stephen mentioned, it is pretty large, and there is some unused space. So they are working and trying to get creative, as Stephen mentioned, working with the MOCA Museum of Contemporary Arts to, maybe reprogram some of the space and do some type of partnership where it's simply not just a visitor information center, because these days, especially with the internet and various apps, a lot of people get the information they need, things to do, places to eat, directions online now. So it can be reprogrammed. And along with FID, our Forensic Investigation Division, Sharon's work, and the audit, I think the Visitor Information Center, they've addressed a lot of the issues, a lot of the concerns that they've had in prior years. Okay. All right. The next audit that was issued since the last audit committee meeting, it was another very important program that the city council instituted, obviously with the pandemic and businesses being shut down. City council wanted to provide funding for a lot of small businesses, and they did that under a program called EDIP, Economic Development Incentive Program. And there was a Part E, which was the COVID-19 Pandemic Assistance Program. So Tony Gonzalez, our audit manager, conducted that audit. So I'm going to let him brief the committee on the purpose and results of that audit. So Tony? Tony, you're on mute. So Tony, you're on mute. There you go.
Thank you, Lyndon. Sorry about that. As Lyndon has mentioned, the city has provided pandemic assistance programs to the citizens of Virginia Beach, and this one's the third one that we've looked at. The first two others we've completed, and they were for the citizens of Virginia Beach, and this one is for the businesses, for the city. And this one, as Lyndon mentioned, has been spearheaded by the Economic Development Department, and it's supposedly for rentals, but they've expanded that to other other expenditures of the businesses because of the hardships that they've encountered due to the pandemic. The purpose of this audit that we did was to determine the process for awarding grants if it's according to policy. And what we did is we've looked at, initially did some work on them. We've looked at a lot of their work because they've asked us to, Taylor, the director, asked Lyndon for us to look at their process to see if they're doing things correctly because they said they're not auditors. So we've lent assistance to them, and we did some preliminary work on this one. And on the final work, what we did is we looked at they've corrected that. In the final work, we looked at the main requirements, if they fulfill those main requirements of the policy. And they did that, except for this result that we found, that 6 of the 244, which comprises 2% of the grant recipients, own the space in which the business is operated. This is contrary to the policy requirement that the business needs to be operated on a leased space. So what they're required is it has to be operated on a leased space, but these 6 own the space in which they operated their business. So we've inquired with the city attorney's office and asked them, does this make sense that these businesses also suffered the pandemic? There are also pandemic casualties. And what the city attorney has acknowledged was that this should not have been a requirement, as it's not consistent with the grant's intent of providing financial assistance to struggling businesses. So they realized that, and they said that it was at that time there was a lot of uncertainties on the challenges that the businesses were facing, and it was very difficult for them to create the policy. But due to their acknowledgement, we therefore deemed the grants given to the 6 recipients are no longer considered as exceptions.
Okay, and so the dollar amount was about 2.5 million is what the council allocated for this program, and I believe it was $10,000 was the maximum amount of the grant. And we, Tony did a good job, assisted with Stephen on this, because they worked really, really quickly, and a lot of times when you're working quickly, you may not get everything right, but the bottom line is they wanted to try to get the money out quickly to these businesses. So we were very flexible in working with them. And at the end of the day, they were able to utilize the amount that was authorized by the council. And I do think, $10,000 may not seem a lot, but from what we've heard, all the local businesses were appreciative, because this was primarily last year, right when the pandemic was on its onset. So I think the city council did a great job in taking swift action to try to give these businesses these grants early in the pandemic. All right, and so Tony and I know Stephen worked on it as well, did a great job with that. Any questions? Okay. All right, thank you, Tony. All right, so we talked about, as I mentioned, Lori talked about the Troy and Banks audit. So that's something that we have going on. And so the next slide we have is our fraud, waste, and abuse update. So Sharon Hayes, our fraud manager over the fraud investigation division. I'll turn it over to you, to Sharon, to provide the committee an update. And then the next slide is just an update on a recently closed case.
Thank you, Lyndon. I should have known there would be a slide in here on the next case. As you see, we had to date is 37. Well, as I always tell you, we can get I think we can get a case in at any time. So I think that number is already up to 39 since we turned that in. And we were the staff that have been in. Myself and another staff member were at 3 different sites today. So we've been in a lot. The Office of the City Auditor, we've been in a lot of places for the last 2 weeks and in on a lot of days because it seems like, I don't know what it is. And there is a trend with people saying they're working from home and we're not really finding evidence from them working at home. So our case numbers are starting to go up and it's requiring us to get out in the field a little bit more. But ultimately, we have 37 cases. We only have 5 open, and Lyndon's saying for working from home, that's pretty good. And we were able to close 26 of them, but 3 of them are still in the referral. As you see, 14 of them are substantiated, and 15 of them are unsubstantiated. And then we have inquiries received to date have been 10. So the inquiry numbers have gone down a little bit. Are there any questions?
And we also, just this past quarter, you know, Sharon and I do throughout the year, we attend various departments in-service training. So one of the departments that we speak to annually is Parks and Rec landscape management. Is it just landscape management?
Yes.
And usually we have to do it over 3 or 4 days because they have a small conference room. So this year they actually did it at the convention center because the convention center was free because they're not booking any conventions. So we were able to do 1 day. I did 1 day and Sharon did 1 day, and they had the entire group in there. So we are constantly doing fraud, waste, and abuse training. And besides landscape management, Sharon, I know you did at least one other one.
I did a 2-day training, well, 1 day training, but 2 different trainings, virtual for human services.
Yeah, for human services. So, and then as part of the new employee orientation, they also get a brief training on the Integrity Connection program, which includes discussion of the city's fraud, waste, and abuse program. Okay. All right. And this was just in the news, you know, that's why I included this because, you know, Sharon, they get a lot of different cases from people not, you know, the risk has changed now that people are working from home, you know, that they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. But this was one they had worked on a few years ago that finally was tried. And I'm sure if you read the paper, you saw this article. Okay, and this was just one of the employees that was in economic development. But this was something that Sharon worked and her team worked hard on a few years ago. And sometimes it takes years for a case to close, or if it goes to trial. But that one finally closed just last week. Okay. All right, so we've got some good news that we wanted to share. So we now doubled the amount of certified fraud examiners we have in the office. We went from 1 being Sharon to 2, right? That's double. So I want to congratulate Danny. Let's see, where's Danny at? So Danny worked hard and he passed on his very first time, right, Danny? So I want to, so we want to congratulate Danny for earning the designation of certified fraud examiner. So both staff members on the fraud side are now CFEs, 100% of our auditors. And then also want to congratulate Tony. Tony was promoted from audit senior to audit manager. Okay, so we want to congratulate Tony for continuing to be an asset to the office of the city auditor. He's worked on some very complex audit, including the audit where we won our very first Knighton Award. So well earned. And so congratulations both to Danny and Tony.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Lyndon.
Okay. All right, getting to the budget. So I believe the 23rd is next week. The city manager will present the city's proposed fiscal year 22 budget. And the Office of City Auditor's budget request is expected to be funded in the proposed budget, restoring our contracted manpower. And just to update you, I think we updated you last December that during the budget cuts, the necessary budget cuts last year, we did lose a position, but through the budget process, we were able to get that FTE back, and it will be restored beginning January of 2022. Okay, so that will be last year. That'll be next week. And speaking of the budget, I want to recognize our longtime budget director, who is now our deputy city manager. And at the end of March, he waited till after the budget, that's a dedicated employee, David Bradley will be retiring. How many years, David?
32 and a half.
32 and a half years with the city. Let's give David a hand.
I appreciate it, Lennon. Thanks for recognizing that.
Yeah, so David, what's that, Gretchen?
Oh, I said congratulations.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, so David has had many hats with the city, from public utilities to economic development, as the long-term budget director. And to show, what a great director David was, the impact you make on your staff. Okay, so currently the budget director at Chesapeake is a former budget manager that David hired. Jonathan Hobbs is the budget director at Chesapeake, and the budget director in Virginia Beach is someone David hired. So he's certainly leaving a legacy with the city. And David used to be right around the corner from us, but we appreciate your service And, you know, I know you will certainly be greatly missed throughout the city.
Thank you so much, Lyndon. I really appreciate you saying that.
All right. And as we briefed you last December, we're going through the process of the individual financial audit services RFP process. So by the next meeting, probably sooner than that, we will let you know who the CPA firm will be to conduct our fiscal year 22 audit. All right. So we're okay. So I think that we're coming to the end. Rosanna has the schedule out here. We try to stick to that same quarterly third Thursday, except for in December coming up, just to keep everybody's schedule straight. And a couple things before I turn it back to our chair. In June, we will, normally, I believe last March we gave you our audit follow-up report. We slid that to June this year because of other things that were going on and trying to you know, reach people and do that follow-up. We just thought it would be best to kind of push that back. So next month, in addition to the fiscal year 22 audit schedule, we will provide you with the audit follow-up status report. Okay. All right, Sharon, I'm going to turn it back to you. If any of the committee members has any questions, you can take those or any comments.
Thank you, Lyndon. I would just like to reemphasize and congratulate on the certification and the promotion and all the hard work that the staff does, and just say keep up the good work. Karen and Emil, do you have any comments?
Oh, no, congratulations. And I did have one question. Lyndon, you had mentioned the TPO or telecommunications by the third party. Have they started that yet?
Yes,
Or
they
is
have.
that-
Yes,
Okay,
they yeah, so we had a probably either 3 or 4 weeks ago, we had a entrance conference, and when we do these audits, we treat them as we're the ones doing the audit. So we have an entrance with our IT director and their IT folks, so they're all on board. They understand, you know, that Troy Banks is working through us. They understand they have to cooperate. So, you know, we go through the same process, and they, you know, to their credit, they're very welcoming. They have been very cooperative, and I know Troy Banks is making progress because we've given them the access to Verizon, Cox, as well as Vita. So yes, that is underway. And as soon as those reports are completed, you know, during the next audit committee meeting, we'll update you both on the energy side as well as the telecommunications side.
Hey, Lyndon, the telecommunications one won't be done until late in the summer.
Yeah, whenever it's done. So I imagine it'll take a while. So.
Okay, and is the RFP y'all put out, is that just for one fiscal year, or are y'all gonna have it for multiple?
It's multiple years, and it's negotiated through the contract, but the RFP will not be just for 1 year.
Okay.
Usually, you know, whenever we get whenever we get to that point, we'll negotiate, but usually it's multiple years with options.
Okay. Those were all my questions. Keep up the good work.
Okay, thank you. Emil?
Just a congratulations again to all, and always amazed at the hard work that you guys put in, despite the challenges that you're having, especially from last year and this year. So, you know, again, congratulations to the certifications and the promotions, and the newly retiree. So that's all I have.
Okay, so, all right, and again, I want to thank you as the audit committee for volunteering your time to serve on this very important committee. I know the council appreciates it. I talk with our Vice Mayor Jim Wood. He had to drop off to go to another WebEx, but he did want me to thank the audit committee, and and we want to thank our liaisons, from the city attorney's office, Rod for keeping us straight, Wendy Hugh, who is our new finance director, and of course David Bradley, our deputy city manager. All right, Sharon, I'll turn it back to you for the official adjournment.
Okay, thank you, Lyndon. Thanks to everyone, and look forward to our next committee meeting. This meeting is adjourned.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Stay safe, and we'll talk soon. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.